Shalom, greetings from Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hessen, and this is TV7's Israel at War update. And today we mark day 707 since the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates launched their atrocities upon southern Israel in 2023, October 7th, that is. Since then, of course, many hostages were either retrieved or released from Hamas captivity. From the initial number of 251, today we are at 48, and unfortunately, there is no light at the end of the tunnel as we speak. There are some developments in the Gaza Strip, particularly in the vicinity of Gaza City, where the IDF is preparing for chariots, or Gideon's chariots rather, too, in which the military is expected to launch a high-intensity offensive to fully eradicate the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates, to dismantle the organization's capacity to both govern and conduct any type of terror-related activities from that city. Beyond that, the situation, of course, in the United Nations in New York, we had a special session, emergency session, that was called upon by no other than Pakistan and Algeria to condemn Israel for conducting its strike on the leadership of Hamas in Qatar. And beyond that, we'd also have the Iranian question, the situation vis-a-vis the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, dominated, of course, by the Houthi tribes in Yemen, and much more. But before all that, let's introduce our experts for today, to include retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, who formerly served as Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs, among others. Next to him, Colonel in Reserve Reuven Ben Shalom, who is a cross-cultural strategist and a senior fellow at the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University in Herzliya. And last but not least, Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense. It's great to see all three of you. And I'd like to start with you, General Kimmett, when we're talking about the international condemnations endorsed even by the United States to push such a condemnation through the Security Council against Israel, raises some questions, since wasn't it the United States that eliminated bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda at the time, who was responsible for 9/11, the atrocities committed 24 years ago yesterday during the session of the Security Council, which naturally was enshrined in UN Security Council Resolution 1373, allowing countries to pursue such activities, highlighting, of course, the threat to international peace and security. But that same country that hosted bin Laden, namely Pakistan, is now triggering this condemnation of Israel that even the United States endorses when we're talking about the same circumstances exactly in another country, namely Qatar.
Well, I'd say two things. Number one, the U.S. vote is, in my mind, idiosyncratic. Nobody can argue that the United States has stood firmly behind Israel for many, many years, vetoing resolutions that seem to have almost unanimity either in the Security Council or in the General Assembly. I would suspect that part of this may have been picked at by the president, who didn't seem to be fully informed beforehand for the attack in Qatar. So let's certainly hope that we have not changed U.S. policy in this regard. As for Pakistan, I'm quite surprised because Pakistan is on a charm offensive right now with the United States. Their Field Marshal Munir has exploited the rift between India and the United States to their advantage. So I was surprised to see that because the charm offensive had been working quite well up to this point. So we'll have to see, either in the issue of the United States vote or the Pakistan resolution, if this is a temporary phenomena or is this a shift in policy. I certainly think it's the former and not the latter.
Indeed. Well, I couldn't agree more with you. And I'd like to ask you, Colonel Ben Shalom, since when we're talking here about the circumstances of this event. Naturally, Qatar happens to be a major non-NATO ally of the United States. It did caught it by surprise, since it was under the impression that it can do whatever it wants and not uh, be held accountable for those type of actions on its own soil. But at the same time, we're also seeing a scenario in which it does proclaim its intentions to retaliate with a army of mercenaries. I don't see it really happening, but nonetheless, it does have its asymmetric capacity that it was embroiled in for many years and could engage in a different type of warfare.
Well, first, as to the threats by Qatar, I would say don't be ridiculous. You can be angry, by the way, and you can condemn Israel. And I would even argue that they could have legitimate claims in a way because it's their sovereign territory. And for sure, I don't expect them to be happy with what happened. They were harboring Hamas, hosting them in Qatar. Are they happy that Israeli F-35s drop bombs in their country? No, they're not. The part of threats, I take that just as rhetoric to be part of, what are they going to do? So they'll be angry, so they'll threaten, etc. Threaten to do what to Israel? Attack masterminds of terrorism that are hiding in Israel? I mean, again, don't be ridiculous. Just to do something for the sake of doing it doesn't make sense. So that part doesn't trouble me at all. Now, Qatar is a problematic country. In Israel, where there's almost a joke now that Qatar, is it an enemy? Is it not an enemy? No, it's a complicated country. Funding Hamas for many years, harboring, by the way, the loudest voices against Israel through the media, etc., and other complications also that even go into Israel. What can you do? They were harboring the masterminds of everything that's being done towards us. All this doesn't mean that I personally think this was the right thing or the right timing. You can argue and you can have your own opinions, but you must see it in the complexities of these circumstances.
Not necessarily harboring the most anti-Israeli voices, but rather paying for them, which of course goes hand in hand. But in any event, General Gavish, I'd like to hear your take on this somewhat complexity. Since we are right now engaged in a multi-front war, we're just ahead of Operation Gideon Chariots number 2. And in this context, what does the IDF plan on the broader scheme of things at a time when the international pressure does seem to be mounting?
Well, for the IDF, I think the question is really the policy that would be made by our cabinet and political leaders. The IDF is basically executing this policy, and I think that we could say that we saw again and again that the IDF is capable of executing this policy. We had to fly very far in order to do what we've done in Qatar, but it was done. So from the IDF, pure IDF point of view, I think what should be said is that still the Gaza Strip, this is the main issue, the main fight is over there, as you just mentioned, and I think this is where we are going to be focused in the next weeks or maybe even more than that. But we would have to continue and being alert for the different missions all around. We talked about 7 sectors, so now here we go. We have another one. But just the last few days, we saw that there were some terrorist attacks coming from the West Bank, and once again, we have to be looking at this area. It's not that we didn't do it till now, but we see kind of a rise of terrorism. So IDF point of view, focusing in Hamas, but still, whatever is being needed to do, the IDF is capable.
Absolutely. Well, General Kimmett, shifting gears, even though it is related, the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, which is dominated by the Houthis in Yemen, continued to launch various types of munitions in the direction of Israel, from ballistic missiles to unmanned aerial vehicles, alongside its continued approach of blocking the strategic strait of Bab el-Mandeb. What is the calculus from an American perspective with regard to this organization at a time when Israel is proactively trying to degrade these terror organizations, various installations, and capabilities.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The other night, I was with some senior personnel from what used to be called Maersk, the shipping line, now called MSC. And it almost seems if everybody has just generally understood that this is a new way of doing business. That's the number one U.S. interest, along with the defense of Israel. But it almost seems as if we have an accommodation with Ansar Allah, the Houthi group, that as long as things don't get too bad for the U.S., we're not going to push too hard. But look, I'd like to reverse gears, and I think there's an incomplete understanding of the U.S. relationship with Qatar that we've had for many, many years. Yes, they are a non-NATO ally, a major non-NATO ally, but Qatar has been clever enough over the years to support the U.S. Air base at Al Udeid, the largest air base we have outside of the United States in the world, and they've given us unfettered access to conducting combat operations from that base. So there are a significant amount of Americans there. We have used Qatar over the years as an interlocutor, for example, in the Taliban peace talks. In many ways, it is somewhat the little brother of the role that Austria played during the Cold War, that it was a neutral country, it was a friend to everybody, and it was a country that provided significant assistance in some of the most critical areas. So again, I think even the U.S. military probably pushed back on the Israeli decision to go into Qatar. Look, Austria had more Russian spies running around it during the Cold War. You couldn't swing a dead cat without running into one of Khrushchev's buddies. So we have understood that they are somewhat of a pain in the ass, to be quite frankly. They're, along with Turkey, some of the most antagonistic countries focus on the Middle East. Very few countries in the Middle East really like Qatar. It tries to punch above its weight, but it has money, it has natural gas. It is willing to play all sides of the issue. And so I think that's what surprised the Americans more than anything else, which may have provided some impetus for that vote you saw at the UN.
Indeed. Well,
Jonathan, if I may, just talking about what the reaction of the international community on the Israeli strike in attack. How was it a few months ago when the Iranian sent ballistic missile and attack? This time it was U.S. forces in Qatar. Was the reaction of Qatar were the same? Well, I'm not sure. So you see again that there is a lot of hypocrisy in the way of how they are reacting to what is happening around when it relates to Israel. So of course, let's bring everyone and let's do whatever we are doing against Israel and so on. I didn't see it against Iran for some reason.
General Kimmett?
Yeah, I think the reason for that, and I would never want to argue with the estimable General Gavish, but the fact remains is that the Iranians gave everybody a heads up, much like the comment about what's Qatar going to do against this attack by Israel. Well, the old British expression, they must be seen to be doing something. We know that something is not going to be much. But in the case of the Iranians, they had to do something to show not only their population, but their IRGC, that they were not going to sit back and allow the Americans to simply attack their country and support an attack on their country without a response. But they did somewhat the responsible thing, called up the Qatari, called up the Americans. Everybody knew this was going to be a demonstration, not an attack. And so what I would say is there is a difference between an attack, which Israel carried out into Qatar, and a demonstration that Iran carried out against Qatar. And that is a distinction with a difference.
There is a distinction with a difference there, I agree. Nevertheless, we did not see Algeria and Pakistan coming out and calling for an emergency Security Council session to condemn Iran on its attack, which is, of course, in this context, also, if you're going to play that charade, do it to the fullest extent, or so some may expect. But Colonel Ben Shalom, when we're looking at the complexities, I'd like to redivert our attention to the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah in Yemen. Naturally, as General Kimmett mentioned, the United States does not have now the political will or appetite, so long as its own vessels are not targeted by this terrorist proxy, despite the fact that China is heavily involved, which raises questions as to whether or not the United States should reconsider its policy. But nonetheless, from an Israeli perspective, what should we take into the calculus?
Well, first, to tie in the Israeli perspective to mentioning the United States, we Israelis always have to respect the fact that the United States have their global reach and global responsibility and their own interests. And it's not that they're not aligned, they're aligned, but the priorities, what to do when, is sometimes not exactly what we want, and we have to fully respect that. I understand the United States now. From our perspective, the Houthis are continuing to be a nuisance when it comes to ballistic missiles, nuisance because we shoot them down, and a strategic challenge when it comes to the naval issue and closing the port of Eilat. But it's not only us, it's the Egyptians. The geography and the layout of the land in Yemen enable them to continue to be a nuisance for a long time, maybe for years. But the thing is that the new Israel now, after October 7th, what we've been doing, what we've been demonstrating, I would even say the technologies and the capabilities that we've shown mean that things have changed. In the past, Yemen and Iran were far. When you said far, that means it's extremely complex to get there. It takes time, it takes distance. Time and distance hardly mean anything for Israel anymore. We're in space, so there's no issue of time. We see it real time. We get wherever we want, and it's going to become more and more so as we have more laser systems. Even we don't need to wait for things to come here. You see it, you kill it immediately. So I think we demonstrated what is possible. The last thing I'll say here, Israel continuously declares that we have this escalation strategy. Our Minister of Defense does it, I think, and I think he brags too much. I wouldn't express it the way he does, but that is the strategy. We'll do one thing. If you don't comply, we'll do the next. If you don't stop, we'll do another. And I think there are more steps to go along the way and more things that can be done. And even if you don't see that we bring them to their knees yet, we are certainly crippling them and disabling a lot of their abilities, which means that things maybe that could have materialized are not going to happen. So I think we still have what to do.
Absolutely. Well, General Gavish, or rather the task force you're heading from Israel's side is dealing, among others, also with the Houthi threat on a near daily basis. What can you tell us about that, and to what degree is it indeed a nuisance, as Colonel Ben Shalom just mentioned?
First we have to talk about the numbers. From the last Israeli strike in the Houthi land with the government over there, they tried almost 10 times, 9 times basically. Only 3 of them went into Israel territories and were fully intercepted by the air defense multi-tier array that is in Israel. And all the others felt short, or in some places around us. Let's call it this way. So we see that the Houthis are struggling in a way from a military point of view with their capabilities to shoot toward Israel. Doesn't mean that they are not trying. They tried also with the UAVs. Those were also intercepted. There was one that penetrated Israel, but this was because of a human error. Unfortunately, sometimes things like this happen. It was recognized as a friendly target. And once you look at it as a friendly target, you don't intercept it. So the Houthis are continuing and trying. But there is a huge gap between what they were saying that they are going to do to what is actually happening, and we see that their capabilities is quite limited. But still, I fully agree with Reuven and what he was saying, because they are influencing and terrorizing the area, and the influence that we see it, Egyptians see it, and others, and it's still there. And I'm still waiting for this moment that it won't be only an Israeli action, and the Israelis that would have to deal with what is happening. I would really would like to see more a coalition effort that would be taking care of the Houthis.
Well, as Colonel Ben Shalom mentioned, there's an escalation dominance at play here. That is Israel's strategy at this point in time. And just for the sake of our viewers, the last Israeli strike on the installations belonging to the Houthi tribe or the terrorist organization Ansar Allah occurred 2 days ago on September 10th. So 9 to 10 projectiles, different types of munitions being launched in the direction of Israel over 2 days is quite an escalation, to say it mildly. Now, General Kimmett, we don't have very much time left, and yet I'd like still to touch on another Iranian proxy, since the Lebanese government has announced that it did receive a response or a plan from the military, the Lebanese armed forces, as part of which they do have a plan of roughly 15 months to disarm Hezbollah with the hopes of not sparking a civil war. Hezbollah, on its part, says, no way, we're not going to comply or assist in any type of disarmament process, and we're going to push back where possible. What can you tell us about that? And can we be a little optimistic seeing the progress from the government side in this context?
Oh, I think we should be optimistic about what the government side is doing. The United States, in fact, is so optimistic that the government will push through with this plan that we're providing additional money to help any type of DDR program, demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration. We should be optimistic about the plan. We should be absolutely pessimistic about the success of the plan. I was having a conversation that same night with a group of very, very respected Lebanese journalists who seem to be quite optimistic the same way. They think Aoun is trying to do the job. But I mean, what are you really going to do with that 27-year-old Hezbollah fighter after you take away his gun and take away his uniform?
Good question. Colonel Ben Shalom?
Well, that is a good question, and perhaps we don't do what has been done in the Middle East. It's difficult to say that, but if you just push them aside and say you're done and you can't feed your family, maybe they will resort to other means of violence. What I want to say about Lebanon is I am still optimistic. The potential is there. I think as Israelis, we should speak less and let this mechanism play out almost without us, I would say. As far as utilizing force in Lebanon, we still are doing it and carrying out strikes, mainly because if we see an emerging threat that is not dealt with or it's a time-sensitive target, we take it out. But even you've seen recently that some of these strikes are sensitive. That means we have to do it extremely carefully, extremely professionally, and always in good coordination with our friends in Lebanon. And yes, I said that, our friends in Lebanon. And I'm still optimistic about this.
General Gavish, the Israeli side here in Jerusalem has highlighted reciprocity as its approach to the situation. If the Lebanese manage to disarm Hezbollah and prove this to be true, the IDF will withdraw from the 5 strategic positions in southern Lebanon. And while there is a mixed optimism to pessimism, it's not cohesive in one approach here in Israel. Nevertheless, it seems that continued efforts are being put into preparatory work of various contingencies if the situation does not prove to be successful.
Well, indeed, Jonathan, of course, this is, as we always said, that the job of the military is they have to prepare themselves for all the options. But I also would like to be optimistic. I think that with the help of our good friends, maybe something positive would happen in Lebanon. But from the IDF point of view, and from Israel point of view, I think what is important to say that from the one hand we are looking forward to it, and if something like this will happen, so as exactly as you said, Israel said that we will be willing to withdraw. But then from the other hand, or at the same time, The IDF is still applying the strategy of preemptive, and whatever something that we see that is rising up in Hezbollah that are doing all kind of things which is against or violating the agreement, Israel is immediately acting, and this is very important. And we talked about preemption. Maybe I'm going back to what we've talked before, but I think it's worldwide to mention. In the end of the day, Israel is saying to Hamas, to its enemies, wherever you are not secure, and we are willing to do whatever is necessary to take care of you and to take care of the threat. And I think this is a strong deterrent signal. Remember when we were 2 years ago.
General Kimmett, there's practically no time, but nonetheless, Israel did strike yesterday in Lebanon, eliminating a senior Hezbollah operative alongside 2 senior IRGC commanders at the level of general. What are we to make out of that? It seems like Iran is not willing to give up on its proxy in Lebanon.
No, I think that's right. But in my remaining time, I just want to make one comment about some good news. Congratulations on the return of Elizabeth Surkoff. I'm glad to see that the combination of Iraq and a couple of outside actors were able to secure her release after far too long.
Absolutely. Just for the sake of our viewers, she was kidnapped. She's a Russian-Israeli researcher who went to Iraq to research the Hashtashabi there. She was kidnapped by Qatari Hezbollah, which is one of the Iranian proxies, as part of this umbrella organization. And after 2 years, thankfully, Israel was able to secure a release with the help, I only say the country that is public knowledge, with the help of Cyprus, which we're deeply appreciative of. So to our guests, General Kimmett, Colonel Ben Shalom, General Gavish, thank you very much for all of your insights today. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.
I'm Eran Etzion, former Deputy National Security Advisor here in Israel, a diplomat, a strategist by training. I'm very happy to be at TV7 and offer my interpretation along my esteemed colleagues. The strong point of TV7 is to be a reliable source of authoritative insight in an era of shallow news environment that is very difficult for viewers to trust.